Hello and welcome back to MindSpanse. My name's Craig, and it's good to be back. It's been probably 2 months since I've done a video, just working on a bunch of other projects, and but very excited. Number one, to be back in Italy. Those of you who followed me for a while, I'd love to come to Casa Maria Luigia, which is in Modena, Italy, and it's run by Lara and Massimo Bottura. Massimo's, as many of you know, is a world famous chef and runs Osteria Francescana, which is a 3 Michelin star restaurant in Modena, as well as many other establishments. And then they started this beautiful bed and breakfast in the countryside. And it's really one of the most beautiful places in the world. So I'm really happy to be here, and I love recording here. So it's a good place to get started recording again. So today I want to talk about a really cool topic because it's a special place. And as many of you know, I'm all about, just elevating daily life with some simple meditation practices. And often these things come up just, I've had a long 30-year history studying different types of meditation practices, but I think just as you go through your life and listen and see different things, stuff pops up the way you're like, wow, it's that would be a good helpful hint to have a better day, a few more smiles, a little less pain and suffering and stress and all that kind of stuff. So I always like to start with a little quickie stretch. Breathe very deep through your nose, hold it for a second, and then relax a little bit. I'm going to do a quick bring down so we can sort of get in the mood a little bit. And what we're going to talk about after is our stories that we tell. And it came across from in a lunch I was having with a friend of mine, and I was listening to her stories, and then I realized, like, we all tell these stories, and a lot of these stories come from a past and maybe don't represent who we are today or come from a different perspective. So I want to talk about that and how you can sort of learn more about your own stories that you tell, and then learn how to think about changing them so that you were telling a positive and an accurate description, at least, of who you are today as opposed to who you are when you're 7. So with that, we're going to do a really cool bring down, one of my favorites, and you can do this before bed too, or anytime really when you feel stressed or you just want to just chill. And so the first is to really focus. We're going to just do a very simple breathing exercise, and it takes just a few minutes, and you'll see it's really cool, and you get better at it as you do it. So first, just breathe in, try to relax your shoulders a little bit, and then just breathe in through your nose again really deep, and hold it, and then release. And as you release, I want you to release your shoulders and sort of roll your neck, and don't think too much about it. Just sort of start to think about getting more relaxed. And as you breathe in, you're breathing in, sparkling light, really healing light. And as you breathe out, you're breathing out all the yucky stuff and the stress and whatnot. But the cool part about this exercise is, what I want you to do is, now, when you breathe in this area through your nose, I want you to feel like this incredible amount of oxygen going to your whole head, and really opening up all the passages in your head. And so you're breathing in, and close your eyes and just visualize all that oxygen going straight to your brain, as if you're breathing into your brain. And then when you breathe out, it's like a wind coming from behind and clearing everything out of your brain. And then what I want you to do is close your eyes and imagine the next breath coming down in your shoulder area. So when you breathe, imagine that your mouth is actually at your shoulder area. It's sort of weird, but you actually get used to it. And feel the air as you breathe in coming actually in and through your shoulder blades. And then release it. And then move down to your stomach area and breathe in as if the air is coming straight into your stomach, all the oxygen, and expanding all that space and pushing through all that stress, and then releasing it. And then I get stress in my legs and my lower back, so I go right to my lower back, and I imagine breathing in right in through my lower back, and all that air is forcing all the passageways to open and allow relief. And then I go down and do it to my legs or wherever, or my feet, and you'll get really good at changing where the airflow comes in and using that as a way to open up that space, which creates more room for nutrients and oxygen to flow to that area, and also to just create this sense of relaxation and to relax the muscles and relax the whole area. And so you can do that as long as you like. And it really does work, and it really does bring you very clearly into the present, and also allows you to sort of think about how to de-stress different parts of your body. And we have lots of exercises on how to do that. So now we're feeling pretty cool. And so I was having this lunch, and I was like, she was telling me a story about her childhood. And it was like, it was neither this nor that, but it seemed like something that held her back in the way she expressed herself. And I sort of said, you wear that story like a chain around your neck. And I didn't say it from the perspective of being a meditation person or whatever. I just was saying it like that's how I felt at the time. And it sort of struck her in a way, and realized, and she sort of said, yeah, I said, you could change the story or just tell a different story, or why do you tell a story? And so it was just a thing that popped into my head, and I started to realize that we all do that I do it. I have stories, and I'll share some of the stories that I used to tell and how I tell them today. But so I started thinking about it, and I started realizing that we all do this, and I wanted to address it in a video. And so I spent a few weeks just observing other people and myself. And I think in any of these practices, the first step is, one, to sort of realize something, either through one of these videos or another video, that there's this thing, there's an issue or a challenge. And then, instead of trying to attack it right away, let's observe it. Like any problem, like a knot. Like if you try to untie a knot right away, it just usually gets worse. So you got to look at the knot, see how it's constructed, and turn it around and look at it. And as you look at it, you'll start to see where you can start to create space, and you'll have a much easier time of untying the knot. So I use that analogy a lot, and it's a good one for the mental practice because we have so many knots and so many intricate layers and intertwinings that it often takes a little time to figure out how it's all put together, and start to peel that onion and untie the knot little by little, so we can understand what's going on. So observation is a very important part of the process in all of these things. So I just started observing and taking notes and seeing the kind of stories people told, and in what situations, and then what other people told their stories. And it was really interesting. What I found was that I would say 90% of the stories that people were told were medium to negative. So sort of self-deprecating, or like making themselves look like they had a tough time, or every once in a while someone would say it's a really cool story about themselves, like in the context of, I had this amazing time, it was really fun and whatever. But you'd be surprised that a lot of people tell a lot of negative stories about themselves. And often they were stories from their youth. Very rarely do people tell recent stories, unless it's like, what did you do last night? But when they're sort of telling their core story base, they're from when they were much younger, and probably from a different perspective than who they are today. And also people responded in kind. So if I told a story, negative story, then the other person would tell the negatives how they had a challenge, or so it's sort of not a very good positive spiral. But when someone did tell a positive story, the other person also tells a positive story. So that was really interesting. So through these observations, I realized that two things. One is, just by telling a positive story, you create this positive circle up, because the other person is likely to tell a positive story too, because it gets them excited about being positive, as opposed to, even though they may want to be positive, they don't want to be positive because you just told a negative story. So, and then the second part is to refresh our stories. These stories are old. They're stories that we've been telling since we're much younger, and we've likely evolved and certainly have matured, and they probably don't represent who we are at this moment. So I'll tell you a story I used to tell, and now I try to tell it differently, or I don't tell it at all. So I grew up. I'll tell you the story. I'm telling you the story. This is what I used to say. So I grew up in a town where there weren't that many Jews, and so I got both emotionally and physically accosted as a result of that in school, and there were other things that would happen. They wouldn't let me tell the story of Hanukkah, and all these kinds of things. So it was challenging, and at the time it was very challenging, but it's sort of something that stuck in my head, and I kept telling that story, and I tell it, and I started to analyze, why do I tell this story? What's the purpose of it? Why subconsciously, or why do I say it? And part of it is maybe making people realize that, because I've been successful in a lot of things, and maybe I feel like, it wasn't so easy, and it was difficult, and I came from a difficult place, and I was a lot of overcoming to get there and whatever, and that's sort of BS. But I mean, it isn't, but it doesn't really accomplish that. That's like sort of a weird way to accomplish that. There's so many other better ways to talk about it. But notwithstanding, so this was a story I told, and of course somebody else would tell their story about how they had some horrible abuse as a child in some form or fashion, and all the bad things that happened to them, and then it's like, this is no fun. Like, what? That was all stuff that was 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And who are we today? So what I did as part of this exercise is think about the story differently, and now if I do tell it all, because I try to tell really positive stories about my youth, what a great time I had growing up, and learning to fish, and exploring the woods, and building incredible ice sculptures, and all the wonderful things I did as a child I talk about. But when I do talk about it, I talk about it, particularly in today's world, in terms of free speech, because there's been a lot of censorship, and for good or bad, I don't judge. I just, censorship generally is bad, right? So, in my opinion. And so in the context of that, I say, I had these experiences, but I was taught that freedom of speech and people's ability to express themselves is paramount to the culture that we live in, and in the United States, and hopefully around the world. And yet today that's being challenged, and I was brought up that even the worst speech, the hate speech and all this stuff, it's the price of being in a free society, because at some point, who's in charge of drawing the line of what you can and can't say, assuming you're not trying to hurt people physically. So that is the context in which I tell the story, if at all, and it changes the dynamic of, because that's a very important part of the story that I used to never talk about, and now it's something that I do talk about, and because it's something that's important to me, and something that's relevant to today. And so you can refresh your stories, or find new ones, to talk about, And because you are going to have these stories, you're going to have stories to tell, and it's going to influence not just your own perception of yourself, um, which is the most important thing. Because don't forget, all these stories you're telling yourself too all the time. You're sort of repeating your trauma to yourself, and we talked about this in other videos, where you train your brain to think from a certain perspective. You know, the victim. I'm the victim. You should feel bad. As opposed to I overcame and I'm strong and I'm an incredible person, and and build that mindset in your head, right? That you're crushing it. And so it's not just about external context of conversing or communicating with other people, but most importantly, it's recommunicating to yourself, reconstructing the neural network in your brain to reform in a way that is much more positive, and that will permeate your sort of ego in a way. I mean, you can't totally get rid of your ego, unfortunately, but at least it'll be in a better place, and it won't screw you up so much, and you'll have the opportunity to laugh more and smile more and not get distressed. And that's what I do. That's what I'm all about. So definitely try it. And so what should you do? Take as long as it takes to go and just listen to other people's stories. Just pay attention that someone's telling a story about their life, and then go about your daily communications and see the stories that you tell to people. And why are you telling? Then sort of think, why did I say that? What am I trying to communicate about myself? And does that reflect who I am today? And after a while of doing this, however long it takes, you'll start to realize that you'll realize something about it. It's a very personal journey. So I told you what I realized. I'm sure you'll realize something, and then you can start to adjust it one way or the other to make it more productive for you, and for your ability to communicate with others, and just elevate your life. So that's what I have today, and I hope you have an amazing, amazing, amazing day. I'm going to try to do some more videos here because it's so beautiful. And please subscribe to the channel and like the video and share it with your friends. I have tons of other videos that are really fun, and I also do guided meditations on the channel. So if you want something to help you sleep or to go deeper, check out some of those. So be well, and I wish you an amazing time, and thank you for taking some time with me today.